Good day, everybody, and welcome to our SheVenturesAfrica webinar. So today we will be talking about women traveling to Africa on our own, and that is something that is happening more and more. And we felt that there's a need to maybe look at some of the concerns, some of the obstacles women sometimes have when they are traveling on their own, and to address that and to assist future travelers with these information and how to travel to Africa and what you need to know beforehand. So let's start. So this specific webinar tonight, we're focusing very much on advice from the ladies who have traveled to Africa and what their feedback was. We are looking at doing a second webinar a little bit later in the year, where we will have more tips from female travel leaders and what their tips and advice are for people traveling. So look out for the next one, and we hope to have all of you there again. So the hosts tonight will be myself, Monique Blofield, as well as my mother, Veronica Kutzer. We are a team in doing this, and we love working together and teaching ladies and traveling with ladies and all of that. So we are very happy to have all of you ladies on board here as well tonight. Okay, so let's talk about what this webinar entails. So firstly, we're going to talk a little bit about why women are traveling solo, the common misconceptions about Africa, and I know there's quite a few of them. Also some concerns people have before traveling to Africa, the experiences while traveling physically with logistics, flights, those types of things. Then we'll talk a bit about the cities versus the safari destinations, as well as the weather, clothing that you need to bring, some tips on traveling with equipment, what works, what doesn't work, what to consider. We will also talk about the difference between traveling with an operator versus traveling solo, especially for ladies, and then what it was like traveling with a group of ladies. We will have a few photos and slides from experiences on some of our lady safari trips that has passed in the last year or so, and then some information about upcoming safaris. To start off, let's talk about why more women are traveling alone. And in recent years, this is really a significant rise of women traveling on their own. And the reasons are as diverse as the destinations. So there are no specific reasons. But what we've seen is that women are increasingly seeking independence and adventure, personal growth, and all of this through travel. Many are finding solace and empowerment in exploring the world on their own terms. So, especially for wildlife and wildlife photography enthusiasts, embarking on a solo journey offers unique opportunities for self-discovery and a deeper connection with nature. So I found this beautiful quote by Anita Desai, and it says, wherever you go becomes part of you somehow. And I think anybody that's traveled to Africa will know that this is really, really true. And Africa tends to just, be part of you once you've seen it. And it's an amazing place to travel to. So let's talk about the misconceptions. So common misconceptions about Africa. So Africa is a homogeneous place, and that is the misconception. Africa is very often viewed as a single entity, but it's actually a really diverse continent with 54 countries, each of which have their own unique culture, their own unique languages, attractions, and it really ranges from deserts. I mean, we've got the Sahara Desert and the desert in Namibia. We've got rainforests. We've got beautiful beaches and all of that in the continent. So it's really a very unique and diverse continent to travel to. So we are focusing more on the safari side of the travel to Africa. I know obviously there are other types of trips that you can do to Africa, but for the photographic and for the African safari type destinations, there are 6 countries that are really very popular. In Southern Africa, we've got South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, and Zimbabwe, which are all very popular to travel to. Then in East Africa, you've got Kenya and Tanzania, and then Uganda is also really getting a lot of travelers nowadays. So that is a next one coming up. But yeah, these are the countries that are most typically traveled to for safari type holidays. So let's talk about the size of Africa. Africa is a massive continent. It's actually 30.4 million square kilometers, or in miles, that will be 11.7 million square miles. The total area of the United States, including Alaska and Hawaii, is only about 3.8 million square miles. So Africa is more than 3 times the size of the USA. So this information here is from the National Geographic as well as the Visual Capitalist. And this image clearly shows how you can actually fit so many other countries and continents into Africa. And that really gives a good indication of the actual size of the continent. So there's a lot to see in Africa, and there's a lot of traveling you can do. And this just gives you a bit of an indication of the physical size of the continent. Another misconception is that Africa is dangerous. So yes, there are areas in Africa with ongoing challenges. There are definitely areas that I wouldn't suggest any lady to travel to, but there are many countries that offer beautiful and safe experiences, and especially the safari destination in particular, they are really known for their safety, especially when you're inside these nature reserves. So obviously, once you're inside a nature reserve, there are no general public. It is in secure areas. The animals actually gives you a bit of extra protection because people don't tend to just walk around there. So especially in the reserves, it is extremely, extremely safe. Okay, so let's talk about travel advisories. So when planning any trip, international, anywhere, you'll always want to know and stay informed about risks and safety. And this is really important, especially if you're a woman traveling on your own. So the US State Department have a travel warning system I'm sure you all know about, and it's good to always consult this. The system ranks the countries from level 1, which is a normal precaution, to a do not travel level 4, which is based on things like crime, civil unrest, terrorism, those types of things. If you actually look at the map, you will see that there are very few countries in the world that's got a blue normal precaution area. And that is because, the world is the way it is. So there's a very few countries that are then considered extremely safe to travel to. But if you look at Africa, specifically the safari countries, which I've mentioned a bit earlier, you'll see that most of them are level 2 on the yellow, which is just a slight increased caution. To put that into perspective, you'll see I've listed the 6 safari destinations on the one side here. And then I've listed a few other international destinations that people often travel to for holidays and work, all of those things. And I mean, countries like the UK, Hong Kong, Belgium, Denmark, Spain, all of those countries are on the exact same level as African countries that we are looking at. The travel advisory do still consider level 1 and 2 countries relatively safe, but they ask that if you do travel and you want to do it, register for their enrollment program, which is then a safety security measure. Always a good thing to be rather safe than sorry. So some feedback from our clients. So all of the feedback are from the ladies who have traveled with us before. All of them traveled to us solo, so not part of a couple or a group, only on their own, and they joined some of our female safari trips. So I'm going to read some of these to you, and then I'll give feedback on the comments as I've received them. So the first person here, I've not added names just so that it is anonymous, but there's all the information we received. So the first person said, there's no concerns. I appreciated that others were informed not to go where it wasn't safe, in brackets Johannesburg, and that we were told where it was safe to walk and we had no issues. Everybody was polite. The next person said, I felt safe and cared for at every moment. And then the third one said, I felt safe the entire tour. However, I'm glad that my guide arranged for an airport pickup for me in Johannesburg. I was able to talk with their driver and learn more about what is safe and what to do, not to do as a woman traveling alone. And they were incredibly informative. So once we're on the tour, everything felt safe at all times, and I know where the boundaries are that I shouldn't venture. Okay, so basically, I think the overall feedback was that most of the ladies did feel safe on the trip. And there are obviously ways to create an environment where you feel safe. But I think as long as you are listening to your tour leaders and staying in the areas that are safe, that would all be good. So another one, and here I've got an interesting story for you. So wild animals roam free. That's also a typical misconception about Africa. Obviously, most of the wild animals are actually based in and found in controlled environments like national parks and reserves, where officials are looking after them and managing the diverse species and all of that. And this also ensures, obviously, the safety of both the animals as well as the public. But as life would be, there's always a Murphy's Law somewhere. Only this week, we had an article about a lion roaming free in Pretoria. So obviously, occasionally these things happen. And this is normally where people have these types of animal parks that's closer to the cities. And then sometimes there are escape artists. So they are normally just guided back into the reserves. So this is not a normal thing to see, but it was very strange that just after I made the previous slide this week, we actually had this article in our local newspaper. So yes, it does happen. Okay, limited infrastructure and technology. So there is a lot of misconception about the infrastructure and technology in Africa. And yes, there are areas that obviously are not as technologically advanced, but most countries boast a well-developed infrastructure for general and tourism purposes. The airports are modern, there are tarred roads, hotels, banks, anything you might need, they are available in all of the countries we've listed as the main safari countries. We are prepared to host travelers. Most of the lodges have Wi-Fi. We've got limited cell phone reception at some of the rural areas, remote areas, but most of them do have at least some cell phone reception. Credit card facilities, those types of things are easily available. There are ATMs all over. So most of those things are available. And if you need to find something like that, a tour leader or tour guide's always around to assist you to find any of those things. So let's talk about some of the concerns. So this is specifically before traveling, people who haven't traveled to Africa before. So some of the concerns we've received, and this was mainly before they travel, so what they considered before. The first lady said, I had a bad knee injury just before the trip. So the best thing I did was to book a wheelchair at the airports. I was able to make all my connections because of them, and I felt safe and had no problem at all. CMP made sure that all my visa and vaccine information were handed to me before the trip. The second person said, since I was a kid, I've traveled and lived in many countries, including traveling by myself. I didn't have many concerns when coming to Africa. It was on my bucket list, but I needed to find a good, smallish group of photographers to travel with. My friend mentioned that there was one space on the trip, and I didn't hesitate much after that. So to give you an idea here, we've had ladies travel with us for the first time. Obviously, they had more concerns than people traveling before. The fact that some of the ladies have traveled before and they still didn't have concerns is really great. They actually, in their previous trips, also experienced Africa as being a reasonably safe country to travel with. So that's all wonderful. Just on the point of the wheelchair and the support at the airports, ladies, please don't ever feel bad about asking assistance. The airports are really great with assisting. If you feel uncomfortable, if you've got any injuries, if you walk slowly or you're uncomfortable to walk long distances, please use the airport assist system. It is wonderful. It really works. So please consider that if you need it at all. Okay, so the next lady said, as a single woman, I was concerned about traveling with a large group of people that may be comprised of couples, people of various ages, or people who didn't share the same interests as I. I wanted to ensure that while on safari, there was time to pause to photograph animals that we happen upon, rather than continue driving. The second lady said, I have been to Africa multiple times, so I didn't really have health or safety concerns, but I do often get confused how to be sure the company and the camps are legitimate and good, especially in terms of treatment of staff as well as wildlife. And then the third lady said, I was uncertain where to get vaccinated, vaccines, access to medical care was a concern to her, what is available in the case of medicine and first aid. Does she bring her own? The whole traveling through customs, what do I need? Which hotels, where is safe? What do I do if a flight gets delayed? Currency, which money do I need, etc. So let's start at the top. So addressing the group of people that you travel with, this is always very important. As all of you know, it's not easy to travel just with anybody, especially if you're traveling your own. Being in a group of couples might be awkward. So a lady safari where there are individual ladies traveling in a group together is always a good idea. So consider that when traveling. Also, we find that most of the clients traveling with us are slightly older, not young people. So it's a nice group to travel with. It's more experienced people. And obviously, the people who travel to Africa for safaris all have an interest and a love for nature. And obviously, specifically, there's a lot of interest for photography as well. So the second you're in a group with similar interests, that makes everything much easier. The second person said, been to Africa multiple times and I didn't have any health or safety concerns. What a wonderful comment. we love that that is the way she feels about it. Very relevant question and concern was about how do you know that the company and the camps are legitimate and that they treat their staff and the wildlife that they are in contact with well. This is extremely important. We always suggest that if you use any company, Google is your friend. If there are any concerns or bad reputation or anything like that, you will find it somewhere on Google. There's platforms like your TripAdvisor and all those types of programs that you can use to actually look up the company, see what people are saying, what are the reviews. Also the same with the treatment of wildlife. It's very important that you use a company that includes the hotels, the guides, the drivers of the vehicles, all of that. It's extremely important to respect the wildlife, both for safety reasons as well as looking after the wildlife. There is a website in South Africa called Hello Peter. They do list complaints about companies and businesses, all of that. So it's also a good place to look at any information about the legitimacy and the treatment of wildlife. Okay, and so the last lady had a lot of concerns before traveling. Most of these concerns are supposed to be addressed by whoever your travel agent is. On this note is something that I wanted to tell everybody. It's really, really important to read your information from your tour agency, your travel agency, your operator, whoever you're using. We do tend to send a lot of information, and we found over the years that very few people actually read the information supplied. And this is something I want to note, and I'll get back to it later. But if you do receive information, it's really important to read it and even go as far as printing it, take a highlighter and actually work through it. It's really important to know everything. And most of these concerns would be addressed typically in a document like that. Next up, we're talking about other concerns. Do we need a visa? How long before? What is it a difficult or expensive process? So Africa is really renowned for the fact that we are very, very easy, lenient, and non-expensive visa requirements. If you look at the yellow block there, Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, all of them don't need any visas whatsoever for most international travelers. Kenya doesn't need a visa, but they do have an ETA that you require, and it's just a very quick online form that you fill in. No hassles there whatsoever. Some of the other countries like Malawi, Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Uganda do need a visa. Most of them is a very quick online process, or you can actually just get it on arrival. So all of that, not expensive, very easy to do. And so visas are really not a requirement that most people have to worry about. But it's important that you know before you travel to any country, what is the visa requirements. Never assume that you don't need a visa. We've had people assuming that they don't need a visa for a country they're traveling to, and that can obviously cause severe delays on flights and all of those things once that is relevant. Okay, medical and dietary concerns. So before traveling, and this is obviously relevant for all trips, but specifically to Africa, discuss your trip with a doctor or visit a travel clinic, ideally 6 to 8 weeks in advance of your trip. The doctor will then recommend the necessary medications, vaccines, all of that you might need for your safari. And on top of that, it's important that you do get enough of all your prescription medication. It's also important that you share your medical and dietary information with your tour operator before the safari. Most lodges and hotels cater for special dietary requirements as well. The reason why we sometimes ask as an operator for your medical information is really that we do have it handy if there should be any issues. So please feel free and really make a note that you do send all the necessary information to your operator as well. Okay, some general medical notes. Medical facilities in South Africa are world-class. We are world-renowned. Our doctors are world-renowned. Our private hospitals are really, really wonderful. And that is always great to know that if there's an issue anywhere in Southern Africa, for instance, you will probably be airlifted or taken to a hospital in South Africa, and you will get the best care that you can wish for. Medical facilities in the other major cities for both Southern and East Africa are reasonably okay for emergencies, etc. So if there's really an emergency, you will be taken care of. But South Africa is a short flight away for most of those, and you will be in good care. Medical insurance is a must. And this is not just for Africa, ladies, but for all travel. If we learned anything from COVID, is that life can be crazy. Things can happen that you don't expect. Both travel as well as medical insurance, very important. You need to have that as a backup should anything go wrong. Pharmacies are also really readily available in South Africa, and they are stocked with anything you might need. We are actually known for the fact that our pharmacies are actually quite lenient with medication. Us as South Africans have traveled to Europe and other countries where we were struggling with the pharmacies because we couldn't get everything that we used to be able to get this side. So for pharmacies, you've got no troubles at all. That is more than sufficient for anything you might need in Africa. Okay, so then most hotels and lodges do have first aid kits, as well as your tour operator would also have first aid kits with them. But we always suggest that you make a small kit for yourself. That's more for during the travels, for your flights. And if there's any medications that you might need, or conditions that you do tend to get, have that ready, have it available. But as I said, first aid kits tend to be all around. There'll be something if you need it. What is very important is that you follow the instructions of your guides and your tour leaders while on a safari. They do know the animal behavior. They do know how to determine and avoid dangerous situations. Obviously, being in Africa, traveling, being in nature, there are situations that can be dangerous, but they can also always be avoided. So as long as people consider and listen to their tour leaders, their guides, they will know how to handle any situation like that. Then in general, additional to the very known medical issues, which I'll talk about now, we have things like ticks that can transmit a disease such as African tick bite fever. In about 16 years with CMP, we've not had one client who got tick bite fever. That's more when you're actually walking in the bush that you will get issues like that. So seldom on a safari with a vehicle or a boat, at hotels, those things. Normally they are not around. It will only be physically in walking in nature. And then there are some other strange diseases, sleeping sickness, those types of things. But they are extremely, extremely, extremely rare. I don't know one person in Africa who lives here who's even had one of those illnesses. So very, very rare, nothing to worry about. Okay, so let's talk about the common ones. Malaria is a disease caused by a parasite that spreads through the bite of an infected mosquito. There are areas that are more known for this, and there are areas that are not as known for it. The symptoms normally appear within 7 days to a month after infection, sometimes slightly longer, maybe 3 months at the most. It's very similar to a flu-like symptoms, and it's really treatable. Rule of thumb for protection: insect repellent from dusk to dawn, your malaria tablets, if your doctor do suggest. Both me and Veronica, as well as all our tour leaders, we don't use them at all. So it is personal choice, but your doctor is the best person to consult with that. If there's a lot of mosquitoes at any destination, you can use mosquito nets as well. Most of the lodges do have them if it's necessary in that area. So that's also a good way to protect yourself. Symptoms, just so you know, normal flu symptoms, fever, chills, headaches, nausea, those types of things. In 16 years, we've not had any of our tour leaders or safari clients that actually got malaria in any of the East or Southern Africa destinations. Some of us had malaria on different occasions, but that was none of those from actually being on safari. And if you do take the malaria tablets, it can make it more difficult to test. So if you can't get a proper diagnosis within the first 24 hours of actually having these symptoms, we always say start taking the treatment. The treatment doesn't have a lot of side effects, so it's reasonably okay to use even if you don't have malaria. Always better to start treating. We always suggest also that anybody who returns from any malaria area, if you go home and at any time in the next 3 months you have any type of flu symptoms, the first thing you tell your doctor is that you've been to a malaria area and they should do the tests. Especially doctors in other countries won't obviously know the symptoms as well. They wouldn't expect it as much. But if you do tell them that you've been to a malaria area, they will react quickly. You start the treatment and it's really, really treatable. So as long as you treat, it's not too much to worry about. Malaria areas in Africa. So this is just a map to show you which areas are more prone to malaria. You'll see that South Africa, very, very low ranking for malaria, only a few areas, and that's mainly seasonal. Botswana, a little bit more, as well as Zimbabwe and Namibia, but Namibia also very, very slight. Let's look at a bit of a closer up. So there you can see the red areas are the more high-risk areas. The purple areas are seasonal, and by seasonal, normally that means it will be in the summer months, which is also not the months that people tend to travel to Africa. So mostly travel to Africa happens within winter months. So from, let's say, about April to October, so winter and spring. And in those months, there are very few mosquitoes and chances for getting anything like this is really low. South and Southern Africa, not as bad. Only in a few of the countries, you'll see there's a bit of red there where you need to be a bit more careful. And in the red areas, definitely taking tablets would be suggested. Kenya and Tanzania are all both red areas. Very important to do take your medication. But as I said, in all the safaris there, we've not had a single case of malaria. Okay, yellow fever is something that's actually only relevant for the East Africa. In Southern Africa, there are no yellow fever issues. So no need for any vaccinations there. Again, it's also transmitted by infected mosquitoes. The most important thing here is your yellow fever vaccination. The very important, ladies, you need to get the vaccination at least 10 days before you travel. If you get it 7 days before, they won't allow you into countries like Tanzania and Kenya. You do need to have it at least 10 days in your system before you travel. So that's important to remember. The vaccinations are really effective. So if you've had the vaccination, chances for having this is very low. Okay, and the vaccinations last 10 years. So once you've had it, no need to get it for another 10 years. You get their symptoms much quicker than malaria. You'll get sick within the first few days. Loss of appetite, fever, headache, muscle ache, those types of things. Again, protection is insect repellent and your vaccination. But also in 16 years, not a single case of yellow fever between any one of us or our clients that just traveled with us. So here's the map for the yellow fever. As you can see, Southern Africa is completely white. No vaccination recommended there. Tanzania and Kenya, yes. There is a bit of a risk in Tanzania and a bit more of a risk in Kenya. And for those countries, it is suggested that you do have the vaccination, and actually obligatory that you do have the vaccination for those specific countries. Okay, a new thing that we have now and that's made news is monkeypox. So monkeypox is a viral illness caused by the monkeypox virus. It's been around since the 1970s, specifically in Congo. And it is mostly endemic to Central and Western Africa. So not the countries we tend to travel to for safaris. There's been a few cases in other countries, but it is very few. I think in South Africa, we've had like 20 cases up till now. And this is mainly transmitted through physical touch and sexual intercourse. So chances of actually connecting with someone with the infection, very slim. And obviously then there would need to be some physical touch. So I don't think that's something that we worry about at all, but just because it's made the news, we thought that we would just address it as well. We asked the ladies, how was your travel experience? And this was mainly sort of about flights, transfers, airports, those types of things. And the feedback that we received. The first lady said, traveling that far from overseas, the US, was a bit daunting. I was mostly concerned about making my flight connections with the injury, especially since I was traveling alone. The wheelchair attendants made sure I got to the front of every line. Also, CMP was the best at suggesting flights and helping me book the regional flights. The second lady said everything went exceptionally well, and the regional flights were easy to book from Canada. Everything went according to the agenda, and our tour leader, Veronica, was with the group every step of the way, making sure everyone was supported and accounted for. I don't think there's a lot of feedback from my side on this. It is always daunting to travel far, especially on your own. And I think this lady did exactly the right thing to actually get the assistance for the wheelchair on the flights, and that obviously helped her a lot. We always suggest Airlink as our regional operator for flights. They are on time, they are extremely organized, with very little issues, and very easy to book online from anywhere in the world. So always a great operator to use. Then my travel experience was great, no concerns. Transfers all went well and smooth, and we were clearly explained what was anticipated. All logistics, including the border crossing, went smoothly. The next lady said, I traveled a full day earlier than necessary to make sure I didn't miss the beginning of the tour due to a delayed flight. Because the safaris are quite remote, it would be hard to catch up to the group if delayed. Everything went very smoothly. Our guide knew all the airports well and gave us tips on where to go, the easiest way to get to your terminals. We met with the other ladies, and then traveling through the airports with them was very pleasant. One thing I didn't know about was the recommendation to plastic wrap luggage in Johannesburg, and our guide showed us what we needed to do there. So, okay, on the first quote, the border crossing, obviously she referred to here, was the crossing between Botswana and Zimbabwe to visit the Vic Falls. We've had very little issues there at any point. As for the lady who arrived earlier, she was worried about missing out if there was a delay. And we've had this in the years that's passed. We had people missing flights or had delayed flights. And it's actually not that difficult to actually catch up with the group. To most of our destinations, there are flights every day, some of them even 2 or 3 flights per day. So catching up, not the end of the world, it is possible. And our team will support anybody who has an issue like that ever to get to the place where you need to be. The plastic wrapping of the luggage. This is a concern sometimes with some of the airports in South Africa. So the plastic wrapping is basically a service that they offer at most of the airports, where they physically wrap your entire suitcase in plastic. It's normally not expensive, but you do sometimes need to pay cash. So it's always good to have some local currency with you for something like that. And you just make sure that your bag doesn't rip open or anything happen to it or anybody tamper with it. It just makes it a bit more difficult. And it's a good thing to do when traveling specifically in South Africa. So let's talk about cities versus safari destinations. Feedback that we got, well, to be honest, cities are interesting and I can have a good time anywhere. But the attraction for me and why I spend money to fly so far away to South Africa is the safaris and the wildlife environment that are so different from home. I'm very much enjoyed the nice dinners at the high-end restaurants at one of the nights that we spent in one of the cities. For her personal preference, she spent enough time in the city for that one day and really preferred the time on the safari. She would like to see Cape Town one day, and in particularly a piece of nature there rather than the actual city of Cape Town. And the next lady said we didn't visit any large cities. Everyone was friendly and spoke English where we were. And she said she would like to visit a smaller village, but she didn't have time. So my feedback on this is that the cities in South Africa is like a city in anywhere in the world. They're busy. There's a lot going on. There's obviously more crime in cities than in the rural areas. Always be slightly more on guard. If you're in one of the big cities, they do obviously offer more infrastructure, more technology. All of that is more readily available, but you also need to be a bit more careful when traveling in cities while you are on safaris in Africa. The second lady who spoke about English. So this is quite important. Africa has got a lot of languages. All over Africa, there's a lot of languages that people speak in different countries. In South Africa, we've got 11 official languages, with the 12th one as sign language now coming in also. And because of all these various languages and the fact that we do need to communicate to people from international people as well as people locally who are English speaking, actually a lot of South Africans and African people can speak English. I think more so than a lot of other countries in the world can speak foreign languages. English is very well understood, we're very well spoken, and you will not have issues to communicate in English in any of the 6 countries that we were talking about earlier. And then talking about visits to smaller villages. So there are some cultural experiences that are safe to do and that are nice to see. We do tend, as ladies, to not suggest people to go into Johannesburg City. It is one of the more dangerous areas to visit, and also the cultural experiences there are the same. There are reputable guides there that can take you into those areas if you really do want to go, but that's not something we would suggest. There are a few smaller and more safe environments where you can have the cultural experiences. So in the countries we've talked about, in Zimbabwe at the Vic Falls, there is a cultural village as well as markets where you can visit, which are reasonably safe. You might have someone trying to sell something to you that might be slightly irritating with being persistent, but reasonably safe. Kasane in Botswana, where we stay with the boats, that's really, really safe to walk around in the town, to visit some of the local places there is extremely safe. And then in Kenya as well, both Kenya and Tanzania have cultural villages that you can visit, and that would be extremely safe to do. So if you do want a cultural experience, rather look at one of those other than just visiting Johannesburg's cultural experiences. So the next lady said, I loved everything about South Africa and the people. It would have been nice to arrive early to Johannesburg and perhaps even Cape Town for a cultural experience, but you can't do everything. I really appreciated seeing Vic Falls, but was glad our time there was shorter so we can spend more time at Selati and Chobe. Second lady said, I've been to Cape Town and found it lovely. We had one person harass us a bit asking for money, but then another told the guy to leave us alone. That impressed me. At no time did I feel unsafe, but the crafters markets can be a bit pushy and hard to get away or to actually buy what you want. It's much better in Chobe. So I think all of this just resonates with what I've just said before. If you do want the cultural experiences, there are amazing ones, but find out from your tour leader which are the safer ones to do. And Cape Town also has got amazing cultural experiences as well as normal tourist experiences, and then a lot of nature experiences as well around Cape Town and the Western Cape. So what was the weather like? Africa is known for wonderful weather. So the First Lady's feedback was that it was fabulous and that they were there in June and traveled to the Chobe, Kruger National Park. The weather was crisp in the morning, beautiful during the best part of the day, and cool and pleasant in the evenings. It was absolutely ideal, and although they had a rainy season prior to my arrival, we did not have any worries about rain. Second lady said the weather was pretty perfect, down to about 50 Fahrenheit in the mornings and not above 80 at midday. We started the day in layers, gloves, and hats, and ended in shorts. The last lady said every day was perfect, spring was arriving, and it was great to see the trees coming to life with new leaves. So let's talk about what to pack for this weather in Africa. So we always suggest to pack layers, especially because you're traveling in Africa mainly in the winter months. It will be cool in the mornings, it will be cooler in the evenings, and that is the times that we do conduct the game drives as well as the boat safaris. So always better to have your layers, start with warmer clothing and then layer it off as the day continues. So clothes, khakis, green, beige, neutral colors is always what's suggested for safaris. But as long as you're not wearing extremely bright red and orange where the animals can see you a million miles away, we really don't care. It's really personal preference. Lots of people say don't wear blacks and dark blue colors that can attract some insects, which is more relevant to countries like Tanzania and Kenya. But we do, as tour guides, often wear black. We wear blue jeans, all of those things. So there's no exact science there. It can really be anything that you prefer. Long sleeves are always recommended, even in summer for the sun protection. It's just better. So whether it's winter, summer, long sleeves are always suggested. But in the days it can get hot and you can layer down to something cooler. Shorts, light skirts, jeans, safari trousers, all of those. Your jackets, your sweaters, a rain jacket or a weatherproof jacket is always ideal, especially if you're going to be visiting Vic Falls. You might need a waterproof jacket there. It very seldom rains in the winter months in South Africa or Southern Africa, except if you're in Cape Town area. In Tanzania, you do get quite a bit more rain, and Kenya as well, because it's nearer to the equator. There is much more tropical weather and you do get much more rain there. So especially for there, a weatherproof jacket is also ideal. Always bring swimwear. Even in winter, it can get really hot. Most of the lodges do have beautiful pools. It's nice to have that, so bring it along. Shoes, comfortable hiking boots, sneakers, some cooler shoes as well. Very important, your sunblock, sunglasses, and a hat. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Veronica now just to quickly chat to us about equipment, what equipment we need for the safaris and so forth. So I'm going to move over and you can speak to her.
Hello, ladies. It's just wonderful to be here with all of you. So equipment is something that we really need when we are on safari because we want to usually take photographs. Feedback from clients in connection with equipment. Well, for most people, it's a challenge. You don't have someone always to help you carry and lift heavy suitcases. My rule of thumb is what you pack, you will have to carry. If you are not that strong and you want someone to assist you, I think it's okay to ask for assistance like this one lady did. And then I think it is important to make sure that you have everything with you on your flights. So pack your medicine, your laptop, the things that you don't want to check in, make sure you have that. It might get heavy, and then you need to be able to lift that up into your overhead storage on the plane. Something that this lady said, which I also did, was to buy a hard shell, and I put my camera bag inside that. Then you don't have to be concerned that it might get damaged. But the most important thing for me is that it doesn't look like a camera bag then. It's got the 4 wheels, you can swivel around, you can walk with it easily on those long stretches or at airports. And what happened to me now on a recent trip to Europe, on a train, my camera bag was standing next to my colleague's bag, and we were sitting in first class on the train, and I saw someone walk into our little compartment where our bags were. He leaned over my camera bag that was in a hard shell case, picked up my colleague's camera bag, and jumped off the train with it. Well, if he knew what was in my bag, he would have taken mine. But because it didn't look like a camera bag, it was safe. Equipment's weight is always something to be considered. So this lady said she took a lot of things, and she might consider next time to leave some of the bigger lenses like 500 millimeter at home. So I'm going to talk about equipment a bit later, that you can see what we suggest to pack. This lady practiced at home to make sure she can drag all her luggage. Something I also did now before I went to Europe. I had to have 3 bags. I had 2 smaller rollerboard cases, one with my camera in and another one. And in my big case was my art and all the rest that I need to take. And I practiced to see if I can put those 2 handles in my one hand, walk with it, and not drag it like the bags with just 2 wheels. Alrighty, so general baggage and equipment. As you all know, don't show off with your camera equipment on an airport. Be discreet with your camera equipment. And then some people think if your case weighs more than what it's supposed to, it might be a problem. Usually in Africa, when people are on safaris, the airlines are quite lenient if your camera bag weighs a bit more. That is something not to be too concerned about. Sometimes when we fly in very tiny planes and your camera bag can physically not get up into the overhead storage, they ask you to sky check your camera bag. That is just the word for not taking it with you on the plane, but not to check it in with your check-in luggage. You are on the plane and they take your bag and they put it in the luggage compartment. And then when you come off the plane, they give it to you before you go into the airport. That is safe, but don't leave your laptop in that bag. You have to take it out. People can obviously hire equipment if you don't want to carry heavy things on the airports. And the new technology, mirrorless cameras, are really small and light. If you are in the market to buy a new set, that's something to consider. These little straps that you can buy from Timo, it's just short little straps. What I've seen, if you're sitting at an airport, at a coffee shop, take that short little strap, hook your camera bag and your other bag together, that should someone run past, grab your bag, you won't be able to run off with it because you will have a link between your other things or even on your chair, just as a safety precaution. Hotels usually have safes, so if you need to store something there, you're welcome, but at the lodges, we've never had any problems with theft or equipment getting lost. I think you guys all know the baggage allowances, and that's something that we always give to people once they've booked a flight. About cameras, the one thing that we tell people is the camera that you have is the camera that is good enough. People can't always go buy new equipment or stay up to date with the latest technology. I think the operator of the camera is also the person that really makes the photographs. So the good news is bring the camera you have. Lenses are obviously something that is really important. And if you go on a wildlife safari, you can really bring a range. because we do take wide angle photographs of the landscapes, and you do need a super telephoto lens to photograph birds, but don't bring absolutely everything you have that might be duplicating to keep that camera bag as light as possible. On that note, zoom lenses are obviously a lot more versatile. As the one client said, maybe she will leave a fixed focal 500 millimeter at home next time, because if you have your 100, 400 zoom and you use a converter or extender, you have a very good range to photograph small birds and all the rest of the animals. The one thing that we've learned over the years is some people try to minimize their weight by leaving their laptops at home. And I will rather leave a second body or another lens at home and have my laptop. We really think it's important that people are able to download their photographs, work through them every day, that you can fix mistakes and make sure your work is backed up. A lot of people come with a big bag full of memory cards and just want to fill them and will go and watch them once they're home. I will never recommend that. I think download your photographs. You will need an external hard drive. Buy a big external hard drive. Buy the best one you can afford, that you can back up your photographs and that you are sure you can download everything that you take, because people take a lot more photographs than they think. And on that note, you really need a fast card reader, the best one you can get for the camera and the cards that you use, because it is very frustrating if it takes 36 minutes to download your card. It shouldn't take more than 4 or 5 minutes. So make sure you get the best card reader. And on that note, we sit on the boat with a long lens and a short lens and a wide angle lens, and then we rip out our cell phones and we take cell phone photographs, because it is just so amazing to do that as well, to share on social media, to send to your family at home, and the photographs on cell phone is really great. So make sure you have space on your phone camera. All right, something that is very important to us is the editing of photographs. We have a philosophy that each photograph needs to be edited. So make sure you have your software downloaded, know your equipment, know your software, and if you don't, if you're very new to photography, we do offer photographic mentoring and also editing training. I want to show you this photograph. It was taken with a very long lens and it's very small in the frame. And this is what I want to just demonstrate how important editing is. That is all the metadata. It had to be taken at a very high shutter speed, 32,000 of a second. And now it's been edited. And so it's a very deep crop, and there we had to upscale it to a higher pixel count, and that is the end result. So editing is really important.
Operators versus traveling solo. I asked for some of the ladies for feedback on what their suggestion is on this regard. So the first lady said, I've traveled on my own and I've also traveled with agencies in my own country. I prefer traveling on my own, setting my own agenda so I can focus on the things that appeal to me most. So I usually plan my own trips. With that said, traveling to another country, I do think for safety purposes, it's important to go with a guide who can help you to know what is safe, with ensuring you don't miss anything. So CMP more than helpful than a traditional travel agency. Also, what was important for me was to connect with a tour group that understood my passions and what I wanted to get out of the trip. So I, for instance, wanted to spend unlimited time observing wildlife in their natural habitat while staying safe. Traveling with a guide, especially if you're on your own in a country you don't know, always a good suggestion. Once you do know the country and you're more comfortable, you can travel on your own as well. All of these ladies had similar stories. They all said basically traveling alone, not knowing the country or the culture, it's better to travel with a tour agency that can assist you with anything you might need during your trip. So just a few general travel tips. Very important, as I said earlier, read your documentation thoroughly. There's a lot of information and it's important that you know the information. Send your documentation to your operator. That's also very important, that we do know when you'll be arriving and all of that, so that if there's any issues, we can assist you. Keep your important documentation secure and also send your itinerary to your family. It's always good that someone knows where you are at all stages of your travel. Make sure that your passport is valid and have at least 2 empty pages. This is really important. We've had people staying behind because they didn't have enough space on a passport for the stamps for the travels that they were on. Avoid displaying any expensive items or large amount of cash. As I said earlier, it's good to have cash and have enough cash for the different countries that you're traveling to, but always rather keep the bulk of that in your safe, in your hotel room or at your lodge, and only travel with the cash you need for the day. It's just safer that way. Trust your instincts. Us ladies have a wonderful sixth sense. Trust it. Stay out of areas that you feel isolated. Trust your guides. They know the area. They know where you can go safely. And then travel and medical insurance is a must. Then lastly, we had some feedback about traveling with a group of ladies. It really warms my heart that all of the ladies had extremely wonderful feedback about traveling with the group of ladies. Most of them remain friends still today. And all of them said that joining a group with similar passions and similar interests was wonderful, and that knowing these women enriched their lives. So wonderful feedback there. You can see here we're a group of ladies traveling together. The camera's on the table, ready for the day out. And then here was an interesting comment about someone said, before the trip, they were actually quite worried, getting along with anybody, traveling with people you didn't know. She actually said that you bonded strongly with both the participants and the guides on the trip, and they shared stories and laughs and meals and actually build lifelong relationships. We've got some photos of some of these ladies' safaris that we've done in the last year or two, just to give you some feel of the mood. And all the photos here are taken by some of the ladies on the trips that we've had. So just to give you a quick run through here of some of the experiences, some of the wonderful sightings we've had. And I must say thank you, ladies, for all of you who've sent me some of your photos. I really appreciate that. And you've got some beautiful photographs and wonderful experiences. And again, it's a group of ladies. Elephants at the Chobe is always so much fun and wonderful to see and photograph. This is the hide in Selati, and where the ladies photographed the watering hole there. And this is on the boats on the Chobe River. This photo was taken at Vic Falls, where the ladies did a day trip to view the beautiful waterfalls there. Again, this was some of the photos taken around that area. Here we see all the shadows of the ladies from the boat photographing this beautiful elephant. And here we have some of the beautiful African sunsets. And again, photographs from the hide at night. So a nice combination of different photographs. Then we had some artists with us on some of these trips, and these are some of Michelle Bukun's paintings that she painted from photographs she'd taken on the trip. And there's another one, and the last one of those. So with CNP Safaris, we've got 3 female tour leaders, Ilana, Erasmus, myself and Veronica. We all love sharing our knowledge and having a good time with the ladies who travel with us. I want to thank all the ladies who've sent through your photographs, your feedback, as well as a few beautiful testimonials. We truly appreciate it, and we hope to see all of you again. We do have some upcoming lady safaris that we are working on at the moment. The first one will be for July 2025, and that is a Selati and Chobe back-to-back safari. So this was one of the most popular choices for most of the ladies to do. And so we did a 6-night Selati with 1 night in Johannesburg at the airport and 6 nights at Chobe as well. 14 nights, 15-day safari. The information on that safari is available. And if anybody's interested, please contact me, Monique at cnpsafaris.com. or admin@cnpsafaris.com for more information. Then we are also working on an exciting trip for 2026. So for this trip, African art trip, we will do the same. We will visit Selati and Chobe, and we will, while at Selati, have Michelle give us some art lessons. So we will supply art supplies and we will each paint one of our images during the day while we're not in the hide. There'll be art classes and that will be very exciting. So the information on that will also be available soon. So if you're interested in any one of these trips, contact me and I'll gladly send you the necessary information. So I want to thank all of you for joining, and I want to ask that if any of the ladies at this point do want to switch on your microphones, you are welcome to do so. If you want to give any feedback, anything else that we might have missed out on the webinar that you want to add, we will be more than happy to speak to you now.
I just want to say it's great seeing you guys. I'm so excited and can't wait to be back. Nothing else to add. Everything's terrific. And yeah, I just can't wait to be back.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. We appreciate your feedback, and your paintings are beautiful, and congratulations with your rhino painting that's going to be exhibited soon.
Yeah, it's all boxed up. I just need to get it shipped off to Canada. So it's going to be in the show in Vancouver.
I just want to say something about Michelle's painting of the rhino, because almost all rhinos in South and Southern Africa are dehorned. Michelle had this incredible creative idea to paint the horns in the reflection on the water. And it is so touching to see that, because that's what they're supposed to look like. It really moves me to look at that image. I actually want to cry looking at that image. And it is such a tribute to rhinos and to everybody who protect rhinos. And I just want to thank you for that. It is absolutely incredible.
The whole experience that night in the hide at Selati, I mean, it brought tears to my eyes, and I'm not a crier, but I just sat there. We had, I mean, one after another, we had 4 white rhinos come out of the bush, line up in front of us. And it was a long period of time. They just sat there drinking, and you could see the reflection of the fiberglass caps from the dehorning as they moved their head. And it just really kind of caught my eye and just kind of really, yeah, just got me thinking. And that painting's called Legacy. And it's kind of a question of, is this the legacy we're leaving? Either we have no rhinos or we have to manipulate them so they're not poached. And it's an open question, you know, but it's just something that I think we have to keep in mind about all the challenges that are being faced, and that we are stewards. And so, yeah, it was, but I'm very passionate about them. And so that experience to me just blew my mind.
The only thing I would say is that I really, I'm not experienced with organized travel, and the experience I had with CNP was absolutely fabulous. There was not one thing that didn't go. Everything was well taken care of when we were going. Even the experience at the Zimbabwe border crossing, was absolutely no issues. You know what you're doing, and that's something that is very much appreciated.
Thank you, Anne. I learned something new that day, that poor Canadian people have to pay more for a visa than anybody else in the world. And I have no idea why.
That's true, but in the end, we had a better treatment. The guy took the both of us together and was joking with us.
Yeah, they were really friendly, those border guys. Yeah, it was fun.
And everything was fabulous and just so smooth, Veronica. Again, because we're jet lagged and, you know, stumbling around, and you're just like, go here, go there. Yeah, it was great.
Steve.
Yeah, we miss you.
One thing no one brought up, the food was amazing.
Yes.
I mean, both places, the food was absolutely incredible. And I know people always concerned about what they're going to eat. I mean, I ate better and healthier, and it tasted better than I could ever do by myself at home.
Yeah, same here. The foods and the lodging were just wonderful.
We were actually talking today about we looked up a few things about women traveling to Africa, and there was a lot of things about what to wear and not to offend anybody of any culture. And we actually talked about it, and we said, you know, in Africa, especially the southern parts and the Eastern Africa, the people are actually so relaxed about things like that. I mean, there are no specific what to wear. Nothing is going to be offending anybody. I think we've actually got a group of very relaxed and tolerant people, and that's over all the cultures in Southern and East Africa, and very acceptant to different cultures and tourists traveling to our areas.
Well, if there's any ladies that are watching this webinar and you're sitting on the fence, get off the fence and travel. It'll change your life, and you'll make friendships that'll last forever. And Africa is so beautiful. It's worth every minute, every dollar.
Thank you, Cheryl. I think we can call it a day on your side. And I do want to thank everybody for joining. I really, really appreciate, and for all your feedback and your input and your testimonials that you sent. And thank you for joining us. We truly appreciate.